They stood at the fence line, watching the American farmer drive past on his tractor. Slow, careful, one man on a huge machine pulling equipment across endless fields. The German prisoners started laughing. Camp Concordia, Kansas, October 1943. 200 German PS, mostly captured in North Africa, had been assigned to work on local farms. There was a labor shortage. Young American men were off fighting, so enemy prisoners would help with the harvest. His name was Werner. He was 24, from a farming village outside Munich. He'd worked on his family's farm before the war. Small plots, horses, hand tools, dozens of people working together to harvest enough for their village. Now he watched this American farmer, a man in his 50s named Earl Morrison, sitting alone on a John Deere tractor moving at what seemed like a crawl. The tractor was huge, sure, but so slow, and just one man operating it. Werner turned to his friend Klaus. "This is why they'll lose the war," he said in German. "Look at this inefficiency. One man, one machine going so slowly. In Germany, we'd have 20 men with scythes, and we'd be twice as fast." Klaus nodded. American machinery. Big and impressive, but useless. All show, no substance around them. Other German prisoners agreed. They'd been taught that American industry was quantity over quality, that Americans relied on machines because they were soft, not because the machines were actually better. But they had no idea what they were about to learn. Because in 3 weeks, Werner was going to understand why one American farmer could feed more people than his entire German village. And that understanding was going to shatter everything he thought he knew. The work began. The Germans were assigned to help with the corn harvest. They expected to work the way they always had. Hand tools, hard work, everyone working together in the fields from sunrise to sunset. Instead, Earl showed them a system. The tractor pulled a mechanical corn picker. As it moved through the field, the machine pulled ears off the stalks, sorted them, and dropped them into a wagon being pulled behind. One pass, one machine, one operator. Werner watched, still doubtful. "It's slow," he muttered. Earl, who'd picked up some German phrases, heard him. "Slow and steady," he said in English, then gestured for the translator. Through him, Earl explained, "I'm not trying to win a race. I'm trying to harvest 500 acres before frost. Speed isn't the point. Coverage is 500 acres." Werner did the math in his head. His family's farm was 12 acres. 12 acres took their whole family and hired help weeks to harvest. This man was talking about 500 acres like it was manageable. "Impossible," Werner said. "One man cannot do this." Earl smiled. "Watch." And Werner did watch. Day after day, that slow tractor moved through the fields, careful, steady, never stopping except for fuel and maintenance. The mechanical picker never got tired, never needed rest, just kept going. By the end of the first week, Earl had harvested more corn than Werner's entire village produced in a full season. By the end of the second week, Werner stopped laughing. But here's where it gets deeper. Because Earl wasn't just harvesting corn. He was teaching the Germans something about scale, about systems, about why America could fight a war on 2 fronts and still have food surpluses. One evening, Werner approached Earl at the barn through the translator. "Where does all this corn go?" 500 acres is more than our village needs for a year." Earl leaned against his tractor. "This corn? Some goes to feed my cattle. Some gets sold to the grain elevator. They ship it to cities. Chicago, New York. Some goes to the military for feed. Some gets exported. Lend-Lease sends food to allies." Werner took this in. "One farm feeds cities. Not just me. Every farm around here. Johnson's got 600 acres of wheat. Peterson runs cattle on 1,000 acres. Brown's doing soybeans on 400. We all feed into the system. And the system feeds the country, and the country feeds the world." That night, Werner couldn't sleep. He kept doing calculations. If American farms were all this size, all this mechanized, all this productive, the numbers were staggering. Germany couldn't compete. Germany didn't have the land, the machines, or the system. "We were taught American industry was weak," he said to Klaus in the dark barracks, "that they made cheap goods in quantity, but no quality. But this tractor, it's not weak, it's not cheap, it just works differently than we work, but it works." Klaus was quiet. "Then my father has a farm, 30 acres. It takes our whole family plus workers we hire to manage it. Earl Morrison manages 500 acres almost alone. If this is weakness, what does that make us? The next day, the Germans asked more questions. How much did the tractor cost? How was it maintained? Where did the fuel come from? How did the economic system work that allowed a single farmer to own such equipment? Earl answered patiently. The tractor was expensive, yes, but he bought it with a loan from the bank. The increased productivity meant he could pay back the loan and still profit. The fuel came from American oil fields. The maintenance was simple. Parts were standardized, available at any dealer. The government supported farmers with programs, price stabilization, infrastructure. It was a system, an entire economic system designed to maximize agricultural output, and it worked. Werner watched Earl repair the tractor. One afternoon, the parts were clearly labeled, interchangeable, designed for easy replacement. In Germany, Werner said, through the translator, each machine can fix this. A craftsman is needed. Earl nodded. That's the point. If you depend on a craftsman to fix it, you are stuck. We need systems that work even when things break, even when people aren't perfect. That phrase stuck with Werner. Systems that work even when people aren't perfect. German engineering was proud of perfection, of craftsmanship, but it required experts at every level. American engineering expected mistakes and design around them. Different philosophies, different results. The harvest continued. The Germans worked alongside the machines, mostly doing extra tasks, repairs, loading, transport. They watched that slow tractor cover acres and acres, day after day, never complaining, never tiring. Then came a day that changed everything. Earl took Werner into town to the grain elevator. Werner watched as trucks from dozens of farms lined up, each dumping thousands of bushels of corn into massive silos. The elevator operator explained through the translator, "This elevator serves maybe 40 farms. We process about 2 million bushels a season. It goes by rail to processors, cities, ports for export. 2 million bushels from 40 farms." Werner's entire region in Germany, with hundreds of small farms, probably didn't produce that much combined. "This is why you're winning the war," Werner said quietly. The translator hesitated, but Werner insisted he translate. "You can fight and feed yourselves and feed your allies and still have surplus. We cannot compete with this." Earl looked at him seriously. "It's not about competition, son. It's about systems. We built systems over decades. Infrastructure, machines, banks, rails, all connected. Any one piece isn't that impressive. But together they work." Werner returned to camp that night. Changed. He gathered the other German prisoners who worked farms. "We need to talk about what we're seeing." Klaus spoke first. "The machines are slow, but they never stop. That's the key. We work fast but need rest. The machines work steadily and never rest." Another prisoner, Heinrich, said in the scale, "One American farmer produces what 20 German farmers produce. Not because he's better, but because his system is better," Werner added. "And they designed it that way, on purpose. Tractors any mechanic can fix, parts anyone can replace. Systems that work even when people aren't perfect. That's genius we didn't recognize because it doesn't look like our genius." Over the winter, the Germans continued working with Earl. They learned maintenance, operation, system thinking. Earl, for his part, learned about German farming techniques, crop rotation methods, some hand tool skills that were actually better for certain tasks. "You guys aren't stupid," Earl said one day. "You're just working with different resources. You make beautiful, precise things because you have craftsmen and limited space. We make scalable, reparable things because we have space and need coverage. Different problems, different solutions.